tying back to breath before we go off again.
Yeah.
You have a great chapter in here about nasal breathing, and I was
Yeah.
quite curious about it because that's been something that some of my fellow peers have delved into a little bit with some of these companies that have popped up, right? With mouth taping and all of that. I fortunately for years now have been a nasal breather as much as I can, mostly out of just annoyance of having like my nose clogged and like
Yeah.
that, I guess that personality. And then also before bed, I'm always like, I don't like waking up with a dry mouth or having again that whistle nose. I can't sleep. So fortunately, I don't feel like I need the mouth tape. But talk to me a little bit about nasal breathing, the benefits of it, and
Mhm.
the why behind it.
So your nose is there for a reason. Our sinuses are there for a very valuable reason. We have literally our immune system and much of our nervous system. I mean, we have an enormous amount of real estate if you even think about it in terms of like size and space in our
Mm-hmm.
head dedicated to our sinuses. And so nasal breathing is something now, like so many things. So many things. I'm going to tell you why it's so important, and then I'll tell you why people tend to be all or nothing, and that's
Overstated.
not a good
Okay.
thing either.
Yeah.
But nasal breathing, when you breathe through your nose, you humidify the air and you detoxify the air in many ways when it comes to like dust, pollen, dander, things like that. Depending on the size of the particles, you've got these things in your sinuses called turbinates that will, as long as you're not dehydrated, is going to pick up those particles in the air and fold them into mucus and process those. It'll never get down to those, just the bronchi, the bronchioli, alveoli,
Mm-hmm.
all those things. And ultimately, that is your nervous system or your immune system, which is part of your nervous system. Your immune system doing what it's supposed to do. It's taking out things that could potentially be dangerous to you before they ever get close to those sensitive areas. So that's going to reduce inflammation in your bronchi, your bronchioli. So especially for people who have asthma, allergies, things like that, it's
Mm-hmm.
insanely important to breathe through your nose like as often as you possibly can. Um, Also, if like when I was a lecturer at the university, I would come home absolutely exhausted, and I'm like, I can't go to the gym now. What gives, right? Because I'm just exhausted. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. And so what I found out was that I was just talking all day and I was mouth breathing, right? Whenever
Yeah.
I'm exhaling through the mouth as I'm speaking, right? And so that actually has a negative effect on your sinuses as well. So if you can inhale and exhale through your nose, research shows that you will keep the nose malleable. You're going to make sure that it's again all of those things that you just said. You're not going to have a stuffed up nose as often. You use it or you lose it in many ways with your sinuses.
Mm-hmm.
Now, having said that, there is a fad of let's tape my mouth shut. Now, I will say taping the mouth shut at night is not necessarily a bad idea. I would say to make sure to tape your mouth shut for 20 minutes during awake times, just to make sure you actually don't have any obstructions that you didn't know about. Right, I would
Make sure
hate.
you wake up in the morning.
Yeah, it's better, just safer than sorry. And for instance, my son, he's got this mouth breathing issue at night, and so we got the tape that goes around his lips. It's
Mm.
not it's not like covering and
Over it.
making it so that you
Yeah.
can't do that, because it's not a mistake that we can breathe through our mouth. Like, it's not just like, oh, we just happen to be able to do that and you shouldn't ever do that. But
Mm-hmm.
we can breathe through the mouth. It's an escape hatch if you want to think about it that way. Like, and if I coach swimmers, I'm not going to tell them, hey, breathe nasally in the pool, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's a reason why we have what we have. All these features, they are there for a reason. So I do recommend for a lot of people who have issues with mouth breathing at night to mouth tape. I tend to tell a person to try to mouth tape until maybe for a month or so, and then to try to see if they need it anymore. Most people can actually retrain themselves, and then they don't need to mouth tape forever. Some people do. Some people do have issues where they just always need to mouth tape, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But just like there is no pill that cures everything, a lot of people, it's almost like there's like they show off their mouth tape. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, that's very nice. You have lips. Like we do have lips, right? So
Yeah.
so nighttime mouth taping is something that I am in favor of, and I do recommend it for a lot of people. Nasal breathing in almost every case is good, even whenever you're talking, as much as you can. Breathe through the nose between your sentences. So
Mm-hmm.
all of those things are good. Whenever you breathe through the nose, you activate your diaphragm, you're filtering the air, you're slowing down your gas exchange, you're reducing the amount of CO2 that you're exhaling and inhaling, or that you're exhaling. So you're keeping your CO2 a little higher in your blood. That allows the pH in your blood to be more conducive to oxygen dispersal, and that also
Mm-hmm.
includes in your brain. So there are a lot of benefits to breathing through the nose. However, for an athlete, I see these athletes now. I see people just taping athletes' mouths shut, and I'm not a proponent of that. Unless that athlete just has no lips and just can't
Yeah.
control his or her lips.
Well,
When you're
that's one
conscious
question
and aware,
I was gonna say, and I'll serve it up for you. I
yeah,
was wondering that too because I do a lot of ultra running, which is very slow, but
hmm
at the same time, I've always, I think what I heard on one podcast that was more scientifically based was discussing that there really is no major benefit of nasal breathing while you're running. That a friend of mine also kind of just said like use both at the same time, kind of breathing through both pathways. Uh, so with that said, like what is the right protocol or approach for athletes?
So I will take a different approach than
Mm-hmm.
that. The when it comes to I would say when it comes to weightlifting, as long as you're breathing, I'm happy, right?
Yeah, yeah,
We
it's
get the
pretty straightforward
weightlifting
with that. Yeah.
apneas, and it's like, dude, just breathe. What do you don't have to do a Valsalva for every
Mm-hmm.
for every
Every
movement.
rep. Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to aerobic exercise, running, cycling, things like that, what I tend to do is I tend to use what I call the gear system. Now, there are different gear systems that are out there, but I would say, especially for an endurance runner, nasal breathing is going to help you improve the gas dispersion. So you do want to do nasal breathing to a point, but there
Mm-hmm.
will come a point. There will come a point if you're pushing yourself hard enough that you can no longer, where that's not really helping you.
Yeah.
And there's research, actually
I guess it comes at a cost at that point.
fairly recent research that will show that shows that there is a cost to staying nasal for too long. But I will
Mm-hmm.
say, stay nasal as long as you can. Once you feel like I just can't do nasal anymore, you
Mm-hmm.
probably can go a little longer. But once you get to that point, what I suggest that a person does is breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. So you're exhaling a little bit more CO2, accommodating for that extra push that you're giving yourself. And then there's going to come a time whenever you're pushing yourself so hard that, man, maybe it's a sprint at the end. Maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
maybe you're doing some
Hill,
interval
whatever
trainings,
it is.
hills,
Yeah.
yeah, something like that. Okay, you can drop it into full throttle, right? You can go in and out through the mouth, and there is a place for that. So often you hear a lot of people just oversimplify it. I think there's a place for it, but then if you can, then okay, drop it back into in through the nose, out through the mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to balance your pH, and you're trying to make sure that you're not exhaling so much CO2 that you restrict the amount of oxygen that can be dispersed to your tissues. We know that we need a more acidic environment. The more acidic environment we have, the more oxygen can get dispersed to the tissues, and that's going to help you with your endurance.
Mm-hmm.
CO2 is more acidic. It's going to, and so if you can breathe in and out through your nose, you're maintaining a higher level of CO2, and therefore you're more likely to be able to disperse more oxygen to your tissues for longer. Once you get to a certain point, though, you've got to switch gears. So
Yeah.
I now I'm not that's just how I coach my clients. There are other people that say, okay, we've got more than 3 gears. I teach with 3 gears. Some people, Brian McKenzie, he teaches with, I think he's got 4 or 5 gears,
Mm-hmm.
just depending on who you're talking to. But ultimately, it's, again, we're not machines, even though I'm using a gear analogy. Again, we always speak in metaphors. But
Yeah.
I tend to say there is a time and place, right? Appropriateness is the key. And nasal breathing should be, for most times, it's going to be the best way to go. But there is a time and place for switching to mouth exhales, in and out through the
Mm-hmm.
mouth. There are times and places for that. It's never a only do it this way. Anytime you
Yeah.
hear this is the one way we do it, we don't do it any other way, that's probably an oversimplification.